Welcome everybody to this talk. As Thea introduced me, my name is Lydia Austin, and I am the Interpretive Programs Manager for Custer State Park. What that means is I get to work out in the Black Hills of South Dakota in one of the most beautiful parks, and I work a lot with the visitors, the visitor centers, a lot of the big programs and events and stuff. But today I got invited to actually talk about one of my hobbies, one of my pastimes, and that's cave exploration. Believe it or not, even in the flatlands of South Dakota, we actually have a lot of caves out here, and cave exploration is an amazing thing. You get to go to places where no one's been before, and you get to test yourself, your mental self, and it's a great thing. And so as I was putting this together today, I kind of wanted to take you guys on a trip of how I got into caving, and show you some of the places we've been. As I was going through, I was realizing I was getting a lot of pictures of myself, so bear with me as we go, you guys. But I want to take you on some of the different caves you find throughout the country, because there is a ton. Talk a little bit about South Dakota, some of the big caves we have here in South Dakota, and then if folks are interested in learning more, where do they go, or if they actually want to get into caving. Now, I've been a caver going on 11 years now. I actually worked at Jewel Cave National Monument, and when I started working there, my supervisor asked if I wanted to do cave tours, and I was like, sure, why not? I'm a rock climber, I can do this, never knowing what I was going to get myself into. And it ended up really kind of changing my life, actually, because I met my husband through it and did a lot of adventures. Here's my husband and me in a cave. We go quite often. All of our trips usually center around caves that we can find, and we go exploring a ton of caves, and that's what we'll share today. This is actually one close to South Dakota. This is in Wyoming, called Great Expectations, and he actually proposed to me in a cave, so it really has shaped our lives in there. The last couple of years, I did get out of shape for caving, getting back into it, going into a desk job. You do have to be in a certain shape and physicality to do it, but the reason I'm starting to get into it is these two Hideaways right here. My two boys are 9 and 6, and they are cavers in their own right. I'm amazed and absolutely terrified as their mother that they do this. They actually went on Sunday and went caving. This is my oldest, if it'll work, going through one of the, he comes up through this crawlway and gets going on that one. So we do a lot of caving as a family, and so I've been really getting back into it and going exploring. So a lot of people ask, why do we cave? Why do people even go into these dark holes? What's the point of it? First, it is fun. We actually have a really good time. My family does, friends do, but there's usually a purpose to it. We're trying to either do a map survey of the cave, so we can tell landowners, park owners, things like that, what the underground resource is. It could be a science. Caves are a direct source to water, and so a lot of that can have a huge impact on people's drinking water, especially back east. Doing a lot of science studies. Jewel Cave National Monument, a big one we've been involved in the last couple of years, has been doing this really cool water study and working with microbials for things like cancer and stuff. So we've done a lot with exploration, and it is influenced across the country, like I said. So a quick tour on that is we did start in Dakota, but as we travel, we get to see different types of caves. Caves are typically limestone caves. Limestone is a sedimentary rock, very easy to break down, and water will open up these cave systems throughout the area. This is in Wyoming. This is the Tongue River Cave System. So if you go up by Dalton, you'll see this cave up there, and it's a beautiful cave system up in the canyon. So as you'll see in these pictures, a lot of times you see karst formations, which is that sedimentary rock, and the caves will form into these formations as water goes through them. If you go back east into the what we call the TAG region, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, this is a huge karst system, huge limestone plateau up there, and water has formed very massive caves up there. Cool thing about them is a lot of times you drop in through rope. It's not just a walk up to the cave or an elevator system. This is dropping in. This is my husband. Quick thing on him is he has been exploring caves since he is 12 years old, and he has become a world-class photographer of caves. And so that's why I have a lot of pictures, and I'll probably over-picture all of you, but we get a lot of pictures, and usually he's behind the lens. This is one where I was actually behind the lens, so I actually got a rare photo of him. But you'll see a lot of these. These caves are amazing. This is me dropping Never Sink. And you go by waterfalls and the wildlife in these caves. This is where you see a lot of your blind crickets, fish, and stuff in these type of caves because there is a direct access to them. As with dropping into caves, you do have to climb back out of the caves. They are a rope system right here, and we climb up the rope. This one's Moses's tomb. It's about a 232-foot climb. And so you do have to drop in and drop back out. So that is a big thing when you found it. It's just having that.
I found it, and then I could.
This is another cave down in that Tennessee, Alabama region called Rumbling Falls. This is a over 300-foot drop. You can't see it. There's people down in the bottom, and then right up in here is me as you drop down one. And so this is, again, limestone cave car system as we go into that area. Another type of cave that you'll hear, this one's lava tubes over in Hawaii. I always laugh that we went on our honeymoon in Hawaii and we spent most of the time underground. And you go into the cave systems here, you can see the lava flow as it comes through. And these cave systems were actually used a lot by the indigenous people out there, and you'll see a lot of historical artifacts and stuff in here. So a lot of history is written into the caves out in Hawaii. These are the roots of the trees coming down into the Hawaiian caves. So just a lot of that really neat systems going on. As I said, caves are usually your direct source to your aquifers. Here in the Black Hills, we are direct, Wind Cave and Jewel Cave National Monument, the National Park caves do directly link into the aquifer systems. And so we do a lot of water studies. This is one in Mexico where we're going, or New Mexico, I apologize, New Mexico, where we're dropping into the caves down in New Mexico, down in there. And so, like I said, there's a lot of variety of the caves. You'll see a lot of formations in there. Anywhere from, like the previous one had, this is flowstone coming in that we're dropping in on. This is as the water's flowing over the rocks, carving out the caves, also depositing in the formation, creating what we call flowstone. In this picture right here, you're getting more of the stalactites and stalagmites for you guys out there. Stalactites hang tight to the ceiling. Stalagmites, you might trip over. Easy way to memorize them as you go throughout the cave formations out there. Typically in the Black Hills, you don't get a lot of the wet formations. We don't have a lot of water flowing through the caves. When you see a lot of these types of formations, they're going to be in like the eastern or southern caves. They get a lot more water flow from the surface. Ours divert to different areas. Now there's multiple ways you can drop into caves. A lot of times I like the direct entrance. Jewel Cave's my favorite because it's an elevator. This one was fascinating. This one was a 100-foot drop through a well hole, and we were in Texas, and so we had the Texas elevator. You had the rope attached to the tractor, and the tractor went forward and backwards and dropped the line of cavers into the cave. It was fascinating and terrifying at the same time, but you can drop in different ways into the cave. A lot of times caves are gated. This is that Texas cave here. Gated or access is restricted like this for several reasons. We want to protect the cave. Protecting the cave is very important, and we also want to protect people. A lot of rescues happen when folks don't know what they're getting themselves into, and a lot of those are big drops. And so we do want to protect folks and have restricted access to that. Most of the access is restricted by the National Speleological Society, the NSS. They're a parent organization for caving, and we work with them. And so you a lot of times see hatches, or in this case, a corn silo. This is in Missouri. And we built the silo over the axis of the cave. If you look in the bottom of the floor here, this will actually be the cave that we open up into. And again, climb down. So this one actually had a ladder in it, and it was a 200-foot ladder that we dropped down into the cave. Now, like I said, I'm used to Black Hills caves. I actually really enjoy Black Hills caves because they are dry. There's no critters. I am not a fan of running into snakes or crickets and stuff in the cave. I will act like a girl, as my husband says. And so I enjoy them. This cave in Missouri was completely filled with water, and you'd be going through these passageways here, and like carp and stuff would swim by you or swim by your leg. And I about hit the roof several times throughout this one, but it was a gorgeous cave. Lots of water formations. This one was a fascinating one, learning for water for me, because you'd go by people's wells. Their well would sink right to the limestone to go into the aquifer system. This was an aquifer, the creek system that we were in for water. But water does come right into the cave. Limestone is very permeable, so water will just flow down right into that formation there. Starting to circle a little bit closer to home, it's kind of showing you some of the stuff cavers do, some of the crazy stuff if you haven't already think we're crazy on some of this. This is the Tongue River Cave, one of those first pictures you saw. We do consider it in the Black Hills region. So our grotto, our local caving club, does a lot of work with the Forest Service there. This is a Forest Service managed cave. Heavily used cave by the locals for a long time, so it's very vandalized. You'll see that. It's now gated by the Forest Service, and you have to go through permit process to get it. But we are mapping it because the Tongue River sinks into it. So it has a huge water impact to this area. And also, even though it's gated, kids are really good at getting around gates. And so we're building a really detailed map for search and rescue as well into this area. So we've gone through and mapped the cave. Mapping is incredibly simple in a cave. Obviously GPS and stuff doesn't work down there, and you don't want to bring computers down there. If you guys noticed all the mud, the water, and everything that we're going through, we don't take a lot of devices into the system. If we are going to take a device, it's really packed, like the cameras and stuff like that. And so when we map, it's literally with a compass, a clinometer, which measures our inclination, a measuring device. Long time ago, it was tape measure. We do use lasers now for measuring, a piece of paper and a pencil. And that works the best. And we draw out these maps for folks like search and rescue or landowners or parks and things like that. So this is what we're doing at Tongue River. It's an ongoing process. We're actually going to go again here in 2 weeks to keep up the process going. But really neat cave. Water's going through this cave and has huge waterfalls and stuff in it. Great thing about this one is you are at elevation up in the Bighorns, so this water is like 36 degrees. It's really cold, but it's kind of neat to come in there. But what happens is this water does flow through the cave, and then it sinks into a sump. And they have had some of the teenagers pass away because they tried to go into it and it's long. So we're trying to, just get that information of how long the sump is, where does the water go. And so to do that, we had some divers do it. Now, this wasn't me. I will dive in an ocean where it's big and open. I will never dive in a cave. But we had to haul all the gear through the water and formations. And so, so my friend's Dakota, and you can see like her case, that's actually carrying like the camera and the sensitive gear. So we have it really padded, but we had to bring haul all the air tanks and stuff into it for 2 of our guys to go dive this sump here. And so this is us getting ready. The water's right here, and the sump's back in this area, and they're gonna dive the sump right in here. I'm really glad I never went on this one. This ended up being an 8.5 inch tall passageway, about 24 inches. So they have the packs on the sides of them as they squeeze through, and actually got into another big cavity and opened it, and then the water sumped again, and they're out of oxygen. So we'll have to do another process where we try to figure out how to get the air through there. But we were able to map beyond that and give that information. But again, we're just trying to make that map really detailed, and we do it in a number of ways. There's caves who have specialties, like these guys are for water. We have climbing teams for the folks who want to bring their climbing gear and do climbing safety. As much fun as this is, I will always say safety is our #1 priority, because getting out is not easy if something happens. And so we're always very conscious about safety going in here. It may look like we're a whole bunch of crazy people going and dropping caves, but the amount of hours we've put into rope work and safety into making this is incredible. It's amazing how we do that. So, but back here, this is Jason. As you can see, the sides are there, and he's going to dive that thing. Now, a cave really close to home. This is in Custer State Park. Actually, this is another cave. It's actually the 4th longest cave here in the Black Hills, and was found by accident. It's where water sinks into one of our creeks, Grace Coolidge Creek. And this is called Goodhue, which was Grace Coolidge's maiden name. So it's Goodhue Cave. It's about 1.5 miles long, and you actually drop through the creek here. And this is us setting up the entrance, because once we found the entrance, it was well known, but there's a lot of loose rocks from the creek, and so we went and put a gated entrance on it. So again, we could protect that entrance, protect people going through there. Neat thing about this is one of the only stream caves that we have found at this time in the Black Hills. At this time in the Black Hills, there's over 300 caves. Wind and Jewel being the 2 of the largest ones, and they make a kind of a ring around the granite core of the Black Hills. So we have a lot of caves here. We have a lot of fun projects into here. This is one of the old tourist caves up in the northern hills, up in Van Knocker Canyon. And this is the stairs from that old tour going into the cave. This is me at the top. I would never want to do this on a tourist route. It was very fascinating as a caver going into it. With cavers, like I said, safety is one of our #1 things, and so we do bring a certain skill set that we can help local management out. If you guys have heard anywhere in South Dakota about the Hideaway Mine event out here in the Black Hills, where a number of landowners in Black Hawk unfortunately found out that they had a gypsum mine under their house. The Meade County called our grotto, our cavers, to go figure this out, see what was down there, map it out, our specialty, so we can get a map to them, help them figure out which houses were being affected and what was going on underground. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go on this one. Mines are notoriously dangerous. We don't usually go into mines, and so my husband and I flipped a coin on who was going to go. The other one was going to stay on the surface because we have kids, and I stayed up top and took pictures. He went down and mapped out the cave. Mine down there, but this is the sinks. Gypsum's very soluble, so the gypsum as the water came in. I don't know if you guys can tell in this photo, but there's a car down there. You can see the car bumper. It looks like they dumped a whole bunch of cars into this mine to fill it up before they made the subdivision. But very open passageways down in this mine. You can see the timbers and what's holding it up. These guys went down there and did a very detailed map of this, so the folks up top knew what was underground and what was holding their houses up down there. Like I said, there was cars down there that they had, and mapped it out. Now, two of the bigger caves we do have here in the Black Hills are run by the National Park Service. They're a great partner organization that we work with. A lot of us are volunteers for the National Park Service because we do map them out. Because they're set aside to protect the caves. Wind Cave National Park was one of the first national parks set aside to protect the cave. Jewel Cave National Monument, one of the first monuments. Both have been around for a very long time. Wind Cave was always known that it was big. It was mapped by a young teenager named Alan McDonald, who went out there and mapped it with string and a candle. I couldn't imagine. And we're still finding the cave. Now, the pictures I have of Wind Cave are terrible pictures because it makes it look grand and big. Wind Cave is a terrible, crawly, pokey cave, and so we don't usually volunteer as much. So Wind Cave doesn't grow as quickly as some of the other caves do, just because it's kind of a miserable cave trip to go on there. Wind Cave at this time is the 6th longest cave in the world and 153 miles long. Now, when I say that mileage long, I don't mean like it stretches 153 miles for the cave, South Dakota, so like the whole entire Black Hills. Well, you kind of have to picture the caves. The best description I have is they're like spaghetti noodles. And so like you have a pile of those spaghetti noodles. So if you took them out and stretched them, they would stretch for 153 miles, but often they're just in a pile all wrapped around each other. And Wind Cave is an excellent example of that because it's 153 miles long, but on the surface it's only under 1 square mile. So very compact cave, very tight passageways, a lot in there, a lot of history in there. But it's famous for its boxwork formation. When the first explorers found it, they say that looked like boxes stacked together. It's very sharp and pokey. I will say that if you land on it. But they have the world's largest collection of boxwork there. And they offer some great tours. It's just a neat place to go for down in there. So there's usually narrow fissures kind of going through that area. That's the aquifer. Wind Cave National Park does hit the aquifer. It hits the Madison Aquifer. There's 3 lakes down there, and they've been doing a number of studies. Has some of the purest water in the world that they've discovered for microbial counts, and so we've been doing a lot of studies down in there. But the big one that is near and dear to my heart, where most of my hours, I have over several hundred hours of exploring down in this cave, and there's a lot going on here. It's just a neat place. It's Jewel Cave National Monument. For the longest time, I always put the sign on here. If you guys can't read it, I'll read it for you guys though. Up until the 60s, they had the sign outside the entrance that said, it's a small cave, but the larger is exciting as exploring trip. So they always said this was the smallest cave. It actually almost lost its national monument status because it was so small. It was a mile long up until the 1960s when explorers Herb and Jan Kahn, 2 rock climbers actually from Custer State Park area, started exploring the cave. And since that day, we have added on almost 207 miles. As of yesterday, it was a 208.5 miles long. So this is a huge cave. It's the 3rd longest cave in the world, and it's beautiful. So this is it. Like I said, all those spaghetti noodles, all these lines mean passageways. We map them out for the National Park Service so they know where they need to protect, especially surface. What happens on the surface influences the cave below. So we have a good partnership with the National Park Service. They're great stewards of this. And we have been slowly mapping it out. This is what was found up in 2013. And in 2013, right after we had our 2nd kid, I actually didn't see my husband much after this because we had a huge breakthrough through the splinter section and have added a ton of cave and have learned a lot. We actually hit the water aquifer. Jewel Cave was a very dry cave. The surface has a sandstone cap on it, so it forced the water actually out to different areas. So we were very dry, but we actually hit the aquifer here and have some really cool scientific studies going on. So yeah, we added almost 40 miles in that amount of time. So there's that. This is typical caving in Jewel, very tight quarters. Jewel Cave is either really nasty tight stuff or very big rooms. It's covered with beautiful calcite spar. This is our friend Chris going through what we call the splitter section. You have to go through this to get to the camps, and I'll actually talk about the camps. Jewel Cave and Wind Cave are so large that we actually have set up camps where we will stay the night down in the caves. A typical passageway, it's very crystalline. Unlike creek caves like we were talking where water was flowing into the cave, Jewel Cave had that, and then at one point it filled up and the water filled the passageways up and crystal was deposited on all the walls, and then the water drained back down, overflows, and so you have just tons of crystal coating all the walls down in here. And like I said, a very dry cave as we don't have that flowing water anymore. This is the Crushing Deep, one of the new passageways we found. So like I said, either very narrow, tight stuff or very big stuff going through the caves down in there. Jewel Cave is also known for another formation called manganese. That's that black stuff you see on the ground. It gets into everything and it gets it all messed up. So this is us going out to West Camp. We are getting ready for camp. Usually to take out to West takes about 12 hours of fast caving. And that's hard caving. You're working very hard. And so we realized for safety issues, we needed to start setting up camps where we could recover. The guys are deciding if this is a good spot for a new camp. They lay down and they decided, yes, it's a good spot for our new camp. And so we started lowering supplies for this. We do set up a permanent camp. We can't haul it all out there. So there was an old well hole from an old rancher out there. So we dropped all the supplies in there. And on average, our supplies need to weigh about 13 pounds is what we usually aim for. So that goes there. I'm going to skip past these. But this is what camp ended up being like, folks. We set it up on clean tarps. We try to keep it as clean as possible. The sleeping bags, the tarps, and everything will always stay in the cave. We bring down liners, food, and everything like that. Camps are always set up by water because water tends to be your heaviest thing. And so we have places where we can fill up with water. But our food, our extra supplies, like I said, it's about the 13 pounds. I've gotten pretty good at the food. I like my M&Ms and granola and stuff like that, and then a hot meal in the morning. We do have a way to boil water. So a lot of like your mountain house and stuff like that, that's what we'll bring. I always bring a new pair of socks every day. That's my one thing I have to do is I like my clean socks on there every day. But other than that, you're in the same clothes. It's kind of miserable because they're cold and wet and you get cleaned and then you have to put them on each day. But this is camp. And we will stay anywhere from 1 to 4 days. 4 days is the max that we do stay down in the cave, simply for the fact that you can go a little bit crazy down in the cave. It's just 4 days is a good number. And that's honestly for Jewel Cave, the amount of waste we can bring back out because we bring everything back out. So we bring everything in, everything comes back out. It's not as much as you'd think because you are working incredibly hard and you're sweating buckets. But after 4 days, you're hitting that 13 pounds limiting in, and so you do come out at that time. Like I said, we've had some really cool scientific studies on microbial studies going on the crystal and stuff like that. And so we've brought scientists out to this section of the cave, which has been fun. Scientists aren't always the ready to go exploring, but we need their expertise out in the cave. And so either we're bringing all the gear and learning how to run their study, or they're getting in shape and coming and joining with us. And the big one right now is here at New Year's Lake and Hourglass Lake. Two of the new lakes, obviously New Year's was found on New Year's Eve. And they seem to be cleaner even than Wind Cave. And we're doing huge studies on this one with the microbial studies. They've been doing a ton. So we have to come and collect several gallons of water. They feed it through a filter and get all the microbes out of it. We also like to see where the cave goes. And so this is the guys trying to see if this cave passageway goes without contaminating the water with their dirty clothes. So that's another passageway on that one. But this is that microbial study. So this is us cavers who, for the most part, aren't the big scientists. We're pulling out supplies, but here we are. I'm collecting samples and supplies. Keeping it clean in a very dirty environment is an adventure. And we don't want to mess up, because if you mess up, you have to go on another 4-day trip. And so very slow and precise on what we're doing as we gather all these samples. I believe it's the University out of Akron, Ohio, who's doing this big study out here. And so we've just been collecting the samples for them. So Last cave I'm going to talk about here, we're just showing you guys some of the different caves. You may have heard of this one. It's Lechuguilla Cave down in New Mexico. Another big cave up there is right by the Carlsbad Caverns. It's run by Carlsbad National Park. Very limited access to this one. It took my husband 10 years of being on a waiting list to actually get invited. At the time I was pregnant, so I missed the invite. And as I always told my husband, I want to get invited as me and not as his wife. And so I'm waiting for my invite yet. But you have to do another big drop down this one. If you ever read Nevada Bar, Blind Descent, this is the cave that's based off of. Nevada Bar actually went into this cave, so a lot of her stuff is very accurate. It's really neat. And it's also been on planet Earth. And this is the pictures of my husband where you've seen maybe the chandelier crystals that you've seen on planet Earth. This is him right at those formations. And it's just covered in this beautiful gypsum formations there. This is some of that frostwork and gypsum down in that one. Actually, I think I have this out of order. That's at Jewel Cave, I believe. So to kind of show you guys a little bit of that, like I said, cave mapping is kind of one of our number priorities, especially out here in the caves that have not been fully discovered. At this time, they think we've only found about 5% of Wind Cave and 3% of Jewel Cave, and they base that on volume studies. So what they do is Jewel Cave and Wind Cave are barometric caves, so they quote unquote breathe with the change in weather and stuff like that. And so they're able to calculate the volume of air in each cave, and then they average the volume of air in a typical passageway in each cave and compare that. And they say about 3% for Jewel and 5% for Wind. And I mean, you got to keep in mind that's including your really tight, narrow things you'll never fit into the gigantic stuff, but still fascinating. And so there's still a lot of exploration to go on. There's good camaraderie between the two caves and who's getting longer. Jewel Cave, I always love this, is obviously winning over Wind Cave. Like I said, Jewel Cave is a very broad cave compared to Wind Cave. It's very narrow going into there. And then I just run Lechuguilla here. Lechuguilla is at 149 miles down in there. So a lot of times I get folks who are very interested in it. Some folks aren't very interested in it, but some folks are like, well, how do I get involved? How do I learn more about this? Or even some people are like, how do I get into caving? I'd like to try this and see that. And there's actually some great ways to do that. I did mention the NSS, the National Speleological Society. They are a parent organization, and they do work throughout the world. They are a world-based organization so that all of our practices and standards all stay the same, and we're all speaking the same language with caves. They do a ton for protection, teaching, things like that. Their website is caves.org, and you can learn just going through the website, learn a ton. They also hold conventions every year, and I bring this up because actually if everything goes out right, in 2022, Custer, South Dakota will hold the National Convention for the Speleological Society. We're going to bring several thousand cavers into the small town of Custer and go caving and teach them about the Black Hills. But this is where we hone our skills. We compete for maps. We compete for photos. We have speleological Olympics where we do the fastest rope work or climbing or caving. And so we hone our skills and learn to talk to each other and come up with those new ideas. Get your gear. What's the newest thing? What's safety? Things like that. So we actually have a really good time out in there. This one was a neat one that I just show on here. But we printed out all the maps big so people could walk on the maps on the gym floor and see like what Wind Cave and stuff was like. So that's pretty cool as that goes through. The National Speleological Society is also made up of grottos. Now, grottos are the smaller organizations in each state. States have numerous grottos or simple grottos. In South Dakota, we have one, the Pahasapa Grotto, the Black Hills Grotto. But out east in Iowa and Indiana and stuff, they actually have a number of grottos. And I bring that up because if you get on that caves.org and you want to go to a meeting and see those information, everyone's invited. We always like sharing the information, just like today, doing stories and showing what we do because it is unknown, and we love to have that for that. So grottos also work really closely with the caves, like the National Park Service, Meade County. We help with rescues, we help with education and things like that, just so that we are partnering and have that skill set built onto that. And everyone can join a grotto. If you're interested in cave, you just want to come hear the talks. If you're a private landowner who may have a cave, like I say, we work really good with the search and rescue and our firefighters. A lot of times they come and we'll do mock rescues. So all of us, okay, if we actually have to do a rescue, if a visitor gets hurt in Jewel Cave National Monument on the scenic tour, this is actually how we'll rescue them. Here's who we're going to call because it's a completely different rescue than you would on the surface. And we work with that. And then, like I said, the Forest Service, the Park Service, BLM in some areas, we're the ones who have that skill set to go in the cave and work with those parent organizations. So we can go in there. Like I said, it's caves.org or the Pasapa Grotto. They've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings. So if you ever kind of get into them, maybe you can just jump on the Zoom meeting and kind of learn some of the stuff that's been going on in the area as we go through. So that's kind of what I have, folks, for my presentation here. I do want to thank you guys. I know it was kind of broad, and I hope I kind of answered some questions. We'll go here, Thea, and I can exit out of this, and we can start maybe answering some of those questions if anybody has that. I will figure out how to exit the screen here and go back to you guys. So,
up at the top, it should be end share.
Stop share. Got it.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, we do have one question about the gypsum mine up in Blackhawk, I think it was, from Mary. She said the houses over the cave look fairly new. I'm surprised the builder didn't run into the caves as they were digging the basements. Or did the ground erode over time so it became dangerous afterward?
We're not sure what happened. There is a legal thing going on right there. They're actually trying to find the developers because that mine is not below the surface, and it's actually in public record. It was in the Meade County documents. That mine was known. So something happened. I'm not sure what. That'll be up to the lawyers to decide what it was. But the homeowners are going through a rough time with all of that. They're not getting a lot of answers and stuff like that. So I feel for them. And it was a lot bigger than just the one house when we were initially called. There was 12 houses it's under, and they all got condemned. So, yeah, so there's a lot going on, and they're learning new things every day. So I do know they were looking for two of the developers. One had passed away, and they were looking for the other developer.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question from Anne. What's the best cave in the Black Hills for an out-of-shape person to visit?
So, Jewel Cave or Wind Cave, the private caver, there's a number of private caves out here, Black Hills Caverns, Rushmore Caves, and stuff like that. And in my most diplomatic way, not to throw them under the bus, I will say that Wind and Jewel were made national parks for a reason. All the caves are good, but Wind and Jewel were for a reason. The joy of Wind and Jewel Cave is they have multiple tours for your skill set. So if you want a nice, simple, easy tour, Wind has a better walking tour. Jewel Cave has a good just room. So like my mom liked that one because she could figure out if she was claustrophobic or not, and she didn't have to walk anywhere. She found out she was. She didn't care to go again. But I do know Wind has like a short quarter-mile tour that's accessible as well. And so it's a great tour to go on. Now, I do know this summer neither of the caves are offering tours. They're trying to figure out how to adapt with the new rules for public distancing, but they have hopes that they'll be up and running hopefully this winter or next summer. So
great. I have another question. I was wondering this too, from Jeanette. When you do the 4-day camps, what do you do about going to the bathroom?
Yep, so that's the big one on there is all of that has to come back out. And we do set up what we call restrooms, and we don't go to the bathroom in the cave or anything like that. It's just that we have privacy and everything's confined to one area. But bottles are the way for urine, and then we go in bags for the other one. And like I said, for like me, I burn so many calories, I don't bring a ton up. My husband brings a lot more than I do, but you're really working, so it's not a typical day that you would have it there. So, but no.
This question's from me. I wanted to know, can you communicate with the surface when you're down there?
No, you can't. And so I think that's one of the joys of caving sometimes too, is you really get a break from everything. The first couple days is a little hard, but then it's, what happens. And that does present its own challenges too, though, is that if something does go south on you, getting word to the surface is very difficult. That's what can lead to challenges with rescues. And that's why we're incredibly careful with that safety thing. And it is. Yeah, you're breaking away from the surface on that type of things. Some of the cool things though that they have developed is for like rescues and stuff like that. I'm actually an EMT and I'm one of the head of the rescues. That's why I talk about it a lot. That's actually I always say I have a great job because I get to go up to the patient and be like, how are you feeling? And everyone else has to figure out how to get them out of the cave. But we actually got some old surplus World War II radios, the ones that you crank and you hold up to your phone. And we found out if you run wire through the cave, we can go up to 5 miles in the cave, and then you just clip in anywhere in the wire, you can talk to each other. So we do use that at Jewel Cave for a major rescue because it is cumbersome. But we do have some of those ways that we're able to communicate.
That is interesting. Wow. I have lots of comments on the side here from people who are just loving your presentation. So consider yourself terrific. We've got, people from Nevada and Michigan, a bunch of different states, including South Dakota, on here. So they're all excited about it. Someone from St. Louis, Missouri said she's been to Wind Cave and Jewel Cave and did the Wild Cave tour of Wind Cave.
That's a great tour. The Wild Cave tour at Wind. If you guys are ever interested in caving, the Wild Cave tour at Wind Cave is a great way to start. Jewel Cave is another one. Jewel Cave does have the bragging rights of being the hardest one in the National Park Service, and I'll vouch for that. You're going through a squeeze 8.5 inches by 24 inches. We call it the brain drain there, and you'll go through that one. One of the things I did forget to mention on camp, because I just brought it up because there's the squeeze box at Jewel Cave. When we said we had that 13-pound bag, the reason we confine it to that much is those squeezes. There's a lot of tight squeezes that you have to go through in both caves for that. And Jewel Cave, to get out to camp, we have to go through an area called the Miseries. And this is a half-mile crawlway that on average is 8.5 inches tall, so about the finger to width for me, and 34 inches wide. And so there's some places you can crawl, and there's some tighter areas. The mini Miseries are tighter, and they have a place called the calorie counter that's 7.5 inches tall, and you have to squeeze through that, and you have to get all your gear through that. So that's what really confines how much you can bring into a cave compared to that. And you're hauling it. I mean, you're the one who's responsible for your own gear. You can't pass it on to other people, and it makes it out there. And I tell stories like that, and I always get the question of why would you want to do that? And I think for me personally, it's getting to go into these areas that no one's ever been before, and you get to walk into a room that literally no one's been before, and you light up a crystal or something, and it's the first time often that crystal's ever seen light, and it'll be the last time it's ever seen light, because who knows who's going to come back there. So it's really cool. And those wild caving tours, like at Wind or Jewel, just a touch of it, and you can get that. I mean, like, that's where I started. I started at the Jewel Cave Wild Caving Tour, and I got the bug. And I'm amazed at what I do now. But those caves offer it. I think I just saw a comment about someone did the Mammoth Cave Wild Caving Tour. Those ones are cool. If you guys are ever east, go on those ones. And I think that's one thing going on that is, don't think all caves are the same. I kind of hope I showed that a little bit through my presentation. Just because you've been to Mammoth, don't think, oh, I've been to a cave, I'm not going to go to Wind. All the caves are different in their own thing, and they have such neat stories that you can kind of get hooked learning about the different caves. So
I do have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. When the caves are finally mapped, are Wind Cave and Jewel Cave going to end up being the same cave?
Now, that's a great question on that one. We've had a lot of thoughts, especially earlier, that Wind and Jewel Cave connected. But that big air study I was talking about, where we were able to find out what the percentage of cave we've discovered, through that, we learned the caves breathe differently. Wind, when a pressure change comes, so a pressure change would be like a thunderstorm. When a thunderstorm rolls up, Wind Cave just pushes all the air out right away. It switches very quickly, hence why it gets the 80-mile-an-hour wind gust out its entrance that led to its name, Wind Cave. It gets the big gusts. Jewel Cave, when a pressure change happens, the scientist Andreas, who's from Germany, thinks that it's so massive that it takes it a while to get the gears going in the opposite direction. So it'll have about a 30-minute delay before it actually starts changing. And so because of that, Andreas does not think the caves connect. He said, now, don't connect by an open passageway would be a better way to say it. He said, now they may connect maybe in the aquifer or in a closed passageway, so they're acting independent, or like a really tiny one that negates that airflow. And so they may, but things are starting to point against them connecting.
That's amazing. Another question I have from David. Have you ever had someone who got through a squeeze in one direction but couldn't get through in reverse?
Not usually, but sometimes it may be the direction or anything like that. Often when you fit through something, you can get back. Now, I will say that, like, sometimes your body, you might have to figure it out on how to do it. You learn what you're comfortable fitting through and what you're not comfortable fitting through. So often when someone can get through that, they can get back. Often you can fit the width of your hand is the width of your skull. Your skull is the one part of you that really doesn't compact well. So whatever usually can fit that in. Ladies, it's our hips that usually don't fit through things. And gentlemen, it's usually your chest, because your barrel chest, and that doesn't compress very well. So those are your tight areas, and you kind of learn how to get through things. Exhaling is a really good one because you can press down. If you do get jammed, a lot of times what people can do is they get through something they can't get back out because they're freaking out. I've been in this before, especially over the last couple of years, because after having kids, your body changes, and I had to learn all caving again. And oh man, I got myself so jammed in this tight thing. And if you ever want really good marriage counseling, get one of your spouses stuck and then have to figure out how to get yourselves unstuck. It's really good. But when you freak out, when you totally wig out in a cave, you tense up very tight, and that makes your muscles get tight. So you jam yourself up even more. And then when you start hyperventilating, you bring a lot of oxygen into your system, and you start getting your stuff even more. So as hard as it is you have to calm down, go limp as a noodle, and work your way out. So it takes a lot of mental. I've always said when talking about caving is probably about 25% physical, 75% mental, because you are in everything your mind's telling you. You're in a dark hole, underground, away from people, away from light, and every instinct in your system is usually saying, you are nuts. What are you doing? Why are we doing this? And so it's a very mental challenge as well as a physical challenge.
Oh my gosh. We have a lot of comments on the side too saying, yep, nope. No way.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought it. And then, like I said, after having kids and getting a desk job, I struggled a lot with it. But my boys are leaving me in the dust, and I have to be okay, Mom, that when we get into a tight area, I'm like, yeah, we're cool. This is okay. I'm enjoying this, boys. Let's keep going. And in my mind, I'm going, this is a terrible idea. But it's been a big mental thing for me to get back into caving. But I enjoy it enough that you work on it. So
here's one more question. Do you ever find skeletons down there?
Not of humans yet. Now in the Hawaiian caves, they said there was. We never found one. But a lot of critters we find one in. We just went into a cave called Bear Trap Cave, which this should have made sense. But we found this old calcified bear skeleton up there. But you could see the claw marks of where the bear had fallen into the cave and he couldn't get out. Like where he clawed, it was trying to get his way back out. But in Jewel Cave, a lot of mouse, bats. In Wind Cave, they went on a study couple weeks, well, actually it's been months ago now that I think about it, and found it's like a marmot from the Ice Age. And so actually the mammoth site had them bring it out because it was such a rare find and stuff like that. And so that was a pretty cool find.
Another question, do you see a lot of bats and bat guano?
Yeah, so guano, not so much up here in the Black Hills. Now, if you want to go see the guano farms, go down to like Carlsbad and do some of their wild cave tours. I mean, they are like feet tall. It's insane down there. They mined it on the guano mines. Jewel Cave is actually one of the largest hibernaculums of bats in the world. So that's where they go hibernate in the wintertime. They can have up to 1,500 bats up there. I found out a while ago a typical hibernacula is like 100 bats, and Jewel Cave's at 1,500. So that's a big one there. The eastern caves have some. I kind of got into caving right during the white nose syndrome epidemic, which was it wiped out millions of bats. And in very, very simple terms, if there's a scientist out there, I apologize. This is just a simple way to explain it. But it's like the bats caught a cold, and so their nose itched in the wintertime, and they woke up and there's no mosquitoes, and so they passed away. And so a lot of bats died for that. Luckily, Jewel and Wind do have positive cases of it, but they haven't seen the die-off yet, so hopefully they're getting an immunity to it. But you do see a lot of bats. One of my favorite moments is I was actually leading a tour at Jewel Cave, and we're in the historic area, and we woke a whole bunch. It was getting into fall, right where we're about to cancel tours, and we woke them all up, and the bats were just flying around us, kind of like that scene in Batman. And I did have one kid go, I am Batman. I'm like, yeah, this is so cool. So it's been a lot of fun to see them. I honestly didn't really care for bats, but now that I've been in caves with them, I think they're really cool. They don't bug me as much as they do. They usually stay out of my way. I stay out of theirs, and they eat mosquitoes. So I really like them. On that note, though, because a lot of people during talks that I have say, well, I have them in my house. I hate them. They're in my house. They're in my barn. What do I do? And the easiest way to do it, you guys, is build a bat house. Give them somewhere else besides your house. They actually will prefer something that's not noisy and people not bugging them. Put the bat house up facing the sun, and a lot of times that bat house doesn't work the first year. Just shift it different directions because that's to be a certain way for them to fly in. But the NSS, that caves.org, has a ton of information on bat houses. I've put them up all over Custer State Park because we have a ton of old buildings here, and it was really annoying, and I've gotten them out of all the old buildings and we still have bats, so it's great. So
that's great. Mary said, we just had a bat class. Silka from South Dakota Game Fishing
yes.
did a class for us. It is posted on our YouTube channel. If you look up Olli USD, you'll be able to find it on YouTube and see all the great information she passed on to us about bats. It was really interesting.
And she's a great resource that if you have bats or something like that, if she has her contact information on there, she helps us. She's a great resource.
Definitely. Stacy just posted a link to the YouTube channel. So if anybody's interested in that, you'll want to click on it before you leave the seminar because it won't show up after that. So you'll want to click on it and set it aside. Does anybody else have any questions? Not seeing any others pop up or any frantic hand waves.
Well, you guys, thank you for letting me come. Like I said, it's a true hobby. It's a passion of mine, and it's a great, interesting world. So definitely, if you're interested in checking the NSS, they are the parent organization. They know what they're doing, and they're a great one to have for questions. So, yeah.
Super. Lydia, thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
We really appreciate you joining us. It was absolutely fascinating, and your photographs are top. Oh my gosh. I just want to remind everybody that Olli registration in South Dakota starts on the 21st. That's, I think, this Friday. And it starts at 10 a.m. But take your time. You don't have to hurry to get into our classes because now that we're all on Zoom, we have up to 300 seats available. And we can go a little higher if we need to. I also want to remind everybody about Olli Platinum. It's a special that we're offering this fall, 10 super duper classes for one low price, and it's a fundraiser for us. So if you're interested in Olli Platinum, if you don't have it, you can download it from our website. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email Stacy or I. Our email address is olli@usd.edu, and we'll be glad to pass along those messages to Lydia as well if we have questions that didn't get answered. It looks like Leroy might be holding up his hand.
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
With our 300-person limit, is there going to be a closing time for registration, or will it be open right up to like the different classes that are held?
It'll be open right up until the time the classes are held. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks from South Dakota and the University of South Dakota. Thank you to Lydia from Custer State Park. We'll see her again in September for the history of Custer State Park, which ought to be wonderful as well. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.